honorary fellows, members of IoD Ghana, and the general public, we welcome you to the August edition of the IoD seminars, the Fellows Roundtable, on the topic using human capital, diversity, and talent management to drive organizational behavior. My name is Alessia Kujo. I am the head of operations for IoD Ghana. I will be your moderator for this evening session, which is aimed at an hour, a 40 minutes presentation, a welcome address by the president of IoD Ghana, an admin directive, closing remarks, and the closure of the session. So we'll take some few admin directive. So this session is a virtual session, and we kindly indulge all participants to try as much as possible to minimize their background noise. And please mute your microphone when you're not speaking. In case you have to ask a question and show your camera, let's ensure that the camera is well positioned, and let's try as much as possible to limit distractions. Please write your comments or questions in the chat box and to be read in due course. In case you need any assistance, please reach out to us on 0302 732269 or 0240 714-798. We entreat everyone on the call to follow us on our social media handles for updates from the Secretariat or the Institute. Kindly note that the session will be recorded and the recording will be shared on the platforms from where you got the link to register. And all registered participants will have the recording link sent to your emails as well, no later than close of day Friday, the 21st of August. On this note, it's my humble privilege to welcome the President of the Institute in the person of Mrs. Mary Asare-Yeboah to give us the opening remarks for this session. Madam President, please, I yield the visible mic to you.
Thank you very much, Celestia, and good evening, esteemed members of the Institute of Directors. Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. And whilst I'm greeting, I want to quickly encourage each one of us to continue inviting, friends, colleagues, wherever. They don't have to be members of the Institute of Directors. What is important is that we have so much to offer, very good things that we do, and we like to make sure that the governance landscape reaches out to everyone. So please invite them to join us each time we hold our webinars or seminars. So thank you for coming. For this evening, we are going to have something very exciting, and it's on human capital. And I'm very excited about it because no matter what you do, no matter how much money you have, no matter how much ideas come to you, if you don't have people to help you drive what you are doing, then, things may not work out well. So human capital is extremely important. And that's why I'm very delighted to have my own friend here to walk us through. Usually I like to keep my opening remarks very short so that we have more time for the presenter or the facilitator to talk. So thank you for being here. And as you can see, I have my pad ready with my pen ready to take down all the notes that I can. So yes, I think I'll yield here and ask Mr. Mankra to do the formal introduction of our dear speaker, Dr. Mrs. Stella Agyenim-Boateng, FIOD. Thank you. Is he coming?
Yes, I'm here. Thank you very much, Madam President. And it's my privilege to introduce to you our speaker for this evening. And this evening, our speaker is a leader whose professional journey reflects a remarkable blend of public service, corporate leadership, human capital development, and a deep commitment to transforming people and institutions. Dr. Agyenim-Boateng currently serves as the Vice Chairman of the Public Services Commission of Ghana, bringing to this important national role several years of experience at the highest levels of organizational leadership and governance. Her career has been characterized by a consistent ability to lead transformation, navigate organizational change, and build institutions around one of their most important assets, the people. Her journey has taken her across a remarkable range of sectors. Before joining the Public Services Commission, she had held senior leadership positions at the Volta River Authority, including advisor to the Deputy Chief Executive in charge of services and Director of Human Resources. She has also served as a consultant and Group Human Resources Director with leading organizations including Glyco Group, Vodafone, now Telecel Ghana. And through these experiences, she has led major human resource initiatives, organizational restructuring, and transforming programs across the public and private sectors, as well as a multinational environment. What makes her journey particularly compelling is the consistency of her leadership philosophy. Whether working in energy, telecommunications, insurance, education, consultancy, or public service, she has remained deeply committed to developing people, strengthening institutions, and delivering results. She is widely regarded as a people-centered leader, affable and inspirational, yet decisive and firmly focused on outcomes. Her professional accomplishments are supported by an impressive academic and professional foundation. She holds a Doctor of Business Administration from the Swiss Business School, a Master's in Applied Business Research, an MBA in Human Resource Management from the University of Ghana, and postgraduate qualifications in Public Administration from GIMPA. She also holds a Professional Executive Master's in Alternative Dispute Resolution, as well as a bachelor's degree in English and History, and a diploma in Education from the University of Cape Coast. Her commitment to leadership and governance is further reflected in her professional affiliations. She is a fellow of our dear Institute, the Institute of Directors Ghana, a fellow of the Chartered Institute of Human Resource Management Practitioners, and a distinguished fellow of the Chartered Institute of Leadership and Governance, among several other professional and honorary fellowships and memberships that she holds. She also serves on several boards, councils, and committees, bringing her wealth of experience to institutional decision-making and governance. Beyond these titles, qualification, and boardrooms is a leader who has consistently invested in people. Dr. Agyenim-Boateng has mentored men and women who now occupy key positions in national and international organizations. She has supported young people in education and career development, advocated for gender-related initiatives of society. She is passionate about diversity, equity, and inclusion, and believes strongly in creating opportunities for people to realize their potential. She is an accomplished thought leader, trainer, and public speaker, having delivered numerous lectures and presentations at local and international conferences, seminars, and workshops. Her passion for leadership is captured in her book, 100 Career Nuggets, Keeping It Punchy, which reflects her commitment to sharing lessons that can help others navigate their careers and leadership journeys. And her contributions have earned her numerous awards and citations across the world. Today, please join me to welcome a lady who has spent her career transforming organizations, developing people, strengthening institutions, and creating pathways for others to succeed. I present to you Dr. Mrs. Irene Stella Agyenim-Boateng, a fellow of the Institute of Directors.
Thank you very, very much. And good evening, everyone. I'm so happy to be here. And like Celestia said, and as our president said, and Serum has also said, I think that what we have this evening for me is a real important, discussion across the table. And so I want to acknowledge our president, Madam President, I acknowledge you. I acknowledge all the IoD Council members who are here with us and the fellows, as well as, all participants who are also, joining us this evening. So, as has been said, I think that we don't have much time. So, I would rather, start off by going straight into our discussions, and then we will have some ample time to share some thoughts, get your contributions, questions, and everything else that will support this evening's program. So, I'm just trying to share my slides. Yeah, right. So, let me just put it in a slide mode. Okay, yeah. Why am I not getting it? Yeah, all right, okay. All right, okay. So our topic, I hope you can see my screen. Hello?
Yes, please. Yes, please. We can see
We
your
can
screen.
see.
Okay, thank you. Right, so for the next 40 minutes, I know a few of the minutes have already been taken, but I'll try and do my best to run us through this important discussion. And so we are talking about human capital. And I think that the earlier speakers have all alluded to the fact that it does not matter what resources you have in building your organization. If you don't have the right human capital, you are likely to fail. Your organization is likely to collapse. And not so much because you have the infrastructure, not so much because you have the money, but it's so much because you are not using the people or using the human capital to develop the organization that will, be sustainable. I have always said one thing, that technology, yes, technology rules the world, but it is people who make it happen. And therefore, if you do not have the right people, if you haven't created the right environment and the right culture for your people, if you don't have the right talent and you don't manage this talent, you don't have, diverse views, you are not likely in spite of all the technology that you may deploy, you are not likely, to have a very successful organization. And so it is important that we situate the whole conversation of people as the center or the pivot around which every organization evolves, because competition in itself creates a situation where people become the only distinguishing factor. I mean, if it comes to equipment, if it comes to technology, you can get it off the shelf and likely to give you the same outcomes, as any other. But it is always the people and its management that will create the difference and give you the competitive edge. Globalization today, and therefore, everyone is out there deploying all kinds of, technology, but it is still the people who make that difference. And so, all right. And so in terms of content, we will just very quickly look at human capital, how to manage the human capital cycle. We will look at what diversity is. I mean, we all know, but we look at it in context with organizational behavior, and then what talent management is. As then we will come to the point where we will align human capital, diversity and inclusion, talent management to our organizational strategy, and then we will conclude and give the opportunity to everyone to, be part of the conversation by asking questions. So, what is human capital? I think we are all very familiar with, with human resource. Yes, we are very familiar with financial capital, but the time has come when human beings or the people in the organization should be equated to, something that gives value much more than we have actually looked at them in previous times. And so that value is what we are calling the capital. And what is the value that the people bring to the business? We are talking about the skills, the knowledge, the experience that people possess. I mean, you employ people because they have certain skills that you need. You bring them on board because of a certain knowledge that they have and the experiences, and you put all these together, and that actually brings the value that each individual is bringing to the organization. And so because the economic value of the employee is based not on the skills and qualifications only, but it is also based on the right attitude, then it is very important that we try to nurture the potential for growth of each of our employees, especially those that we put as talent, and then what vision they have, and support them in developing their leadership qualities, and then generally their personality and the very personal brand or image, because whatever image, whatever personal brand, that, whatever reputation and integrity and all the values that, any individual in your organization brings, it inures to the benefit or otherwise of your organization. And so human capital becomes a very, very critical part of whatever we are doing as leaders in an organization. And so in terms of, trying to manage human capital, there is a certain cycle that, we have to go through. Of course, before you can even have the capital to be able to manage, you need to attract them. And so what is it that you are doing in your various institutions to attract the right kind of capital, the right kind of person who has the skills you are looking for, the experience that you are looking for, and brings that kind of value to your organization? And so we have a lot of strategies, that we deploy to attract people to the organization. But that aside, when you have been able to attract them, how are you onboarding them? Sometimes in a hurry, we go and we recruit people, we resource our organizations, but people with such skills and experiences, people who are ready to, run the race with you, they come in and we don't give them any kind of orientation. The onboarding becomes so static, it becomes something that doesn't bring value to somebody who is a real talent. And so as part of the cycle in building and managing the human capital, we need to spend time and really draw right strategies, how we can get these people, onboarded, in the right direction. And then in the third place, in terms of management of the human capital, is the investment in it. So it doesn't matter the kind of skill that, attracts you to bring a person to your organization. It doesn't matter the experiences that they had. For whatever it is, for as long as they stay with you, if you do not invest in them, the likelihood that these people will go stale. And when they go stale, you would have reduced the value of that capital. And when you reduce the value of that capital, you create an environment where there is no trust. You create an environment where people are just mediocre, and you create an environment where the best performer is just an average performer in the normal sense of it. And so if you want to manage your human capital well, the cycle insists on investment in human capital. And that is, the kind of training, the kind of exposure in any form and, shape that will really support the growth of whatever skill that attracted you, whatever experiences or whatever value that the individual has started, or started with, and how that is growing. And it's important also as part of the cycle that we evaluate the value addition. It is not just enough to consider somebody a talent. It's not just enough to consider somebody a successor. It's not just enough to consider somebody in the talent pool. When you do not, as an organization and as leaders, continuously, regularly, and very structured, evaluate the value addition that each of these individuals bring, because the investment that we put in them, it's so huge if you want to do it and do it right, that it will be very, very critical for us to evaluate what value that they add to our organizational strength, to our organizational positioning. And having done all that, it is also important and critical for us to have the human capital retention plan or retention strategy. A lot of organizations, think that the same strategy that goes for the general population is the same strategy that should go for the high flyers or, the talents that we are talking about. But indeed, you can have the same organization, the general policies may be there, but you need structured strategies that will retain your high flyers, that will retain your human capital in terms of those who are selected based on the skills, the experiences, the value, and all to drive the agenda of the organization. Then even when, for some reasons, people separate from you, because of the kind of relationship that you have built, and because of the fact that these same human beings have the power, as it were, to be the point of reference, to be the ambassadors of the organization, we need to have the right process to separate. Sometimes our separation processes are so ill motivated that we separate, and at the point of separation, bad blood is just what is running through all the parties involved, and that in itself is a great disservice to any organization. And so, just as for starters, this is the kind of cycle that we need to put our human capital into, to be able to derive the best from them, and they derive the best from the organization. So if we want to create a strong organizational behavior, it is the human capital that becomes the solid rock. Why? Because when we look beyond recruitment and then we look beyond onboarding, then that is when we are actually creating a right and a real connection with our employees. Like I said in the previous slide, attracting people is not the most difficult of the entire cycle of developing your human capital. In fact, onboarding is not the most difficult one, because these can be put in structures and you can easily fit your whole you can fit your vision and everything into this and be able to bring the right people on board. But what is most critical, and why that can create organizational behavior or support organizational behavior, is the kind of real connection that we have with the people in our organizations, in our businesses. Because these people are the people who are going to create the culture. These are the people who are going to be the ambassadors within and without. And so in terms of the behavior and the persona of an organization, it is the connection that you see between the organizational leaders and the employees, and for this matter, the human capital. Again, we must be very clear on functional responsibilities, because for organizations to have the right attitude, the right behavior, the right culture, people need to have very clear lines of doing what they have to do. But at the same time, whilst we are creating the clear lines in terms of functional responsibilities and lines, it's also important that we create a certain fluidity and information flow, because we should not be people who hide information, because clear and very good talent are people who want to know what is going on. They want to see that their value has been appreciated. They want to have information and to be able to deliver what they have to deliver for the organization. And so that is what creates their behavior and their attitude. It's centered around what kind of information is available to them. And so if we decide not to be very discreet with information that we don't need to be discreet about, if we do not have full disclosure of information that should have the full disclosure of our people, then they become disconnected. And the moment there's a disconnection, it affects the behavior and the culture of the organization. Again, we must intentionally promote employee empowerment, and develop the leaders so that, they can have reasonable decision-making powers. Yes, sometimes some of these words, we just use them, empowerment, development, and all that. But at the end of the day, you realize that people are not empowered in the way that gives them the opportunity to be part of decision making or to have access to reasonable decision making powers. But if that doesn't happen, your human capital becomes, disappointed. They become disillusioned, and it affects their behavior, which obviously affects the organizational outlook within and without. So it's important for us to delegate, to dialogue, and to cooperate so that we can lead with this human capital to build the right, organization, and a sustainable one for that matter. So it is obvious that when we do not give premium or put premium on our human capital. If our human capital is not valued, then we are likely to experience high attrition. High attrition, so people who cannot stay within that kind of environment, they walk away. And so you see organizations that are constantly employing, constantly attracting, but you ask yourself, what is causing that? What is creating that constant, resourcing? Is it that the organization is expanding, or it is just because the attrition rate is so high? And when that happens, the information goes back into the same community of labor, and they start asking, why is everybody leaving this organization? Why are all the top talents, seeking other pastures? And that is when you realize that human capital in such an organization has not been valued, and the real talents are not going to stay with you. Those who decide to stay for whatever reason, maybe they haven't gotten the opportunity yet to step out, they decide to work to rule. And when we say people are working to rule, they just look at what the policy says and they work exactly as the policy says. They don't give the extra, and they don't put in that extra effort. They don't go that extra mile because they think that their value has been misplaced. And so all that they do is, what is it that will keep me in shape? What is it that will not get me into trouble? What is it that will not let me flout a rule or a policy? And so they work to rule. If it is 5 o'clock they have to leave, they will not give you a minute extra because they have done what they have to do. And it becomes more like a contract, a kind of psychological and social contract where it's very, very transactional. And just because we are not treating or valuing our human capital. Then there's low employer reputation. And as I said, when the high attrition starts, everybody in the market is going to find out, why is everybody, or why are all the good talents walking in and walking out in no time? And that will derail the employer reputation. Even within, you will still have employees who may still be there with you, and so long as they do not find themselves valued, the internal attraction itself will not be there, and so the employer reputation will definitely be dented. And you have such employees who may still be your employees. Maybe you think that they are there and therefore they are happy, but indeed they go out there and they will never recommend that organization to either friend or family or anybody who has the opportunity to talk to them about you. And so when that happens, it becomes very difficult to attract high flyers again. It becomes very difficult to attract your high talents because even those who are in will feel disillusioned. And so there is lots of competitive edge for you. And the bottom line is that the organization is very heavily impacted. And so it doesn't matter how much you pump in terms of finances. It doesn't matter how much technology you deploy or what kind of infrastructure you have. For as long as the human capital is not valued, these signs are going to come up and it's going to hurt the organization very badly. I want to talk about diversity. And, so obviously, diversity is just about having a range of people with different personalities, different lifestyle, different experiences, different skills. And so diversity in itself can reflect in the organization. When you look at, gender, you look at age, you look at race, ethnicity, all the other things, culture, religion, even the level of education, the kind of skills training that people have, sometimes even the physical features or emotional tolerance levels. This kind of diversity, you should have a view of what it is that you have in your organization. You can't have people who all think alike because, if it is gender, obviously we know men will think differently, women will think differently, but all these differences are likely to bring to you the exact results that you need, the outcomes that you require, because people will come with different perspectives. The same way as age. I know a lot of organizations where the age profile has not even been determined. People do not know, let's say the HR or whoever the leaderships are, they don't even have a view of how the age profile looks like. Because when you have a diverse workforce where you take seriously the diversity in age and in generation, generational diversity, It supports you in the kind of policies that you even develop in your organization. Because when you have drawn, you have the age profile and you draw your bell curve, you will be able to determine whether you are, as an organization, you are skewed more towards the right or more towards the left. Obviously, if you are more towards the right, it shows that you have an organization where the older people are more. And so you look at, and if it is skewed towards, tilted towards the left, then you have the younger population. And wherever, your tilt is, wherever your balance is, you need to understand that even the policies that you churn out for employee policies, you need to take this into consideration, because the kind of policies that will attract young talents to stay with you and to be retained may be entirely different from the kind of talent, the kind of policies that will cause your experienced people, perhaps, more towards right kind of people, to also be happy to work with you and blend very well. I mean, we talk about all the other things, the level of education, yes. We can today, yes, we know that when it comes to issues of, degrees, everybody has and all that. But there are times that you need people with the different levels of, educational background or qualifications, because you need people who will be at a certain point and grow in the system. You need people that you call the plug and play people who are already, groomed and trained, by qualification, by skills, by everything else. You just bring them on board and they can start running with you. And so the diverse elements are sometimes visible, some are also invisible, because when you go into organizations where you see a culture where there's disharmony, a culture of disrespect for people, a culture where there's no trust, a culture that doesn't have teamwork at the center, then it tells you that this organization has some invisible, diverse elements that are not creating the right condition and the right environment, some micro inequities, some biases that may be hidden, under the carpet. But indeed, when diversity is not brought out from all these different angles, then you are doing your organization a lot of harm, more than the good that perhaps you're expected to do. So when we look at the diversity, inclusion, equity, and equality, what does it promote? It promotes agility, flexibility, and fluidity, because, when people of different views, people of different generations come together and they are all working supposedly in unison towards a common goal. Some are very agile, some have the flexibility to adapt. Some are very fluid and they flow, around different functions and different people. And so that in itself, it's a very attractive organization. Any organization that shows agility, flexibility, and fluidity, you are very attractive. And that brings people, the right skills to you. And it also helps you to retain the right skills, because it improves innovation. Because when people have diverse ideas, when people feel included, when people think that there is equity and, they are treated equally, diversity then will create that kind of innovation where at every stage and for every idea, for every perspective, people want to bring something new on board all the time. And that inures to the benefits of the organization, especially when you are in a very competitive environment. And so customer service is enhanced, productivity is enhanced, because the customer is always, excited about what is going on. They are seeing new things, and the employees themselves become excited because, every day they walk into the organization thinking of what new thing they can bring on board, what kind of legacy they can leave. But when the organization is so monotonous, where there is no diversity, and even where there is diversity, there's no inclusion, or, resources are not equitably distributed, and equality is not promoted, you will have a situation where the same ideas over the last 20 years, over the last 30 years, is what you'll be operating with, when the world would have moved much faster than you ever thought. Because when you disregard diversity, as I said, then there's monotony, there's no variety, and that in itself becomes sickening. And, it brings a lot of mental fatigue to people when there is no variety. And then the status quo is preserved. So no new ways of doing things. When your competitors are thinking and running, the journey with such speed, you will still be handling what it is that, keeps you going just by the little times that you are able, the momentum. But that in itself will create a behavior in the organization where nobody wants to think outside of the box. Nobody wants to be innovative because for them, the organization is creating a behavior of just preserve the status quo, and that is all we need. But that will then cause that organization to be out of business because competition, globalization, and everything else around us today is speaking to the fact that you cannot just keep the status quo and survive. And so when we disregard diversity, then we are in turn we are promoting conscious and unconscious biases. The way we treat people, the way we speak to people, the kind of biases that are not visible but are so demotivating, so hurting, so humiliating. These kind of things will then be, festering in the environment. And it is because leadership may have disregarded the issue of diversity. And that creates discontent as a result of micro inequities. Certain things, resources that are needed for people to work and to create the right atmosphere for them, you realize that people are not given the same or, a kind of resources to do the work they have to do. Why? Because diversity, inclusion are disregarded. And so micro inequities are prevailing and people can have the resources to do better. Others are denied the resources. And so what are we creating? We are creating an environment where the human capital has strong animosity against each other. And when the house is divided, obviously the result is something that we know. So it then results in low productivity because nobody is ready to go that extra mile. And teams become disintegrated because you have a team of diverse workforce, a team of different minds, but because diversity is disregarded, or because the people want to work with people who look same and feel same and have the same skills, indeed teams become disintegrated, and that in itself is not sustainable for any organization. And this is why a lot of these days we are talking a lot about mental health and burnout for our employees, because sometimes it's not because the job is overtaxing them, no, but because they feel that the organization is so insensitive towards who they are, whether by their physical being, their gender, their age, their culture, their religion, or even just as part of the team, maybe even the educational status and everything else. They feel that there's something heavy on them because the organization is not taking cognizance of who they are. And that results in employee disengagement and frustration. And so those who can exit, as we said, will exit, and the bad story will be told out there that comes to hurt your organization. Those who will not exit but will stay in become toxic to the rest of the environment, and even efficient, effective people now become discontent, and they start, showcasing issues that, you cannot deal with. What is the thing that we talk about in terms of the talent management? And we have already said that, as explained by the Chartered Institute of Personnel Development UK, says that it's a systematic attraction, identification, development, engagement, and retention deployment of these individuals. And that is something that we have already mentioned. And so you have your talent. But how do you identify talent? Because it's a question that has come many times, as in I already have the people. But how do I, identify that this person is a talent? There are many ways of doing it, but one that I'm sharing with you this evening is that, you look at their qualification, you want to look at their performance and experience, you look to look at their potential. But let us remember that qualification alone is not enough for you to identify a talent, because qualification stresses on the past, what I have been able to learn, knowledge I've been able to acquire in the past, and maybe the present knowledge that I'm acquiring. So it is more based on the past and the present. When you talk about performance and experience, again, that is also based more on past and present, because your performance for which you've been evaluated is history, it's past. What you did yesterday may not necessarily be what you are doing today. The experience you brought on board yesterday may not be the experience you have today, but of course, for as long as you are in the business and we are investing in you, the likelihood of you, performing and therefore having a present value for your performance and experience is there. But we look also at the potential. Potential is something that organizations miss a lot when they are identifying their talent. They dwell more on historical than the future, but potential dwells on today and the future. And so that kind of talent matrix helps you to identify who your talent, they use this matrix to kind of identify your talent. However, in doing this, the whole matrix is underpinned by what I call the KSA. That is the knowledge of the individual, the skill, and the attitude. The attitude is so critical because that is something that usually organizations are not able to measure, and that can be very evasive, but it is the core thing that actually keeps your talent, in the right shape and keeps the organization in the right shape. So if you do not have, assuming you are using this metrics, and you are not able to get the right, to identify as many talents as you require, then you still have gaps in your organization. You have options of, resourcing your organization. Unfortunately, we always want to use one option, but all these options are available. You will either build, and when we talk about the build resource option, it is about you developing your internal people and raising the bar on their talent, making sure that they acquire the necessary knowledge and skills by exposing them and doing all the other things that will cause your talent to be, really delivering to you. So you can build, that is building the talent of the internal people, or you can buy, and buying is going out there externally to, just headhunt, poach, and do all, use all the other resourcing channels to bring the talent in. And those are the people that the buy people are usually, part of what we call the plug and play, because usually when you are going out there to source for the right person, you go and grab and poach the one who will just come and start, hitting the ground running. Or you can borrow. And when we talk about the borrowing strategy in getting your talent, it's about using a short-term resource, either consultants or, secondment or any other means that will bring somebody in place for a short period, transfer knowledge, and then grow your people, build them, or help you to buy within that period, and then they will exit, and then your people, your new talents will then take over. Or you can, have a hybrid strategy where you deploy any of these to be able to bring the right talent and take care of that right talent, in your organization. So if you want to manage the talent so that you can draw the right behaviors in your organization, then empowerment is important, encouragement and collaboration, which will draw creativity. The creative nature of people come about when they are empowered, when they are encouraged, and when they have the collaboration with others who can give them feedback, and then investing in them and giving them the development opportunities, as well as rewarding them appropriately. These are, areas that you can develop and build on and expand to be able to retain the right talent that you have. So if you do not, manage your talent, then you're not going to get the right people. You'll not be able to retain them. And, your continuous coverage of your critical roles will be by the right people will be a problem, because the clients your clients are not going to be happy, because business improvement will decline, and employee performance will obviously be a reason for that decline in business performance. And when that happens, obviously your clients out there are going to see a drop in your competitive nature. They are going to see a drop in what you had previously maybe delivered to them. And so in terms of managing your time, it is something that no organization that wants to succeed would ever want to, gloss over. So your talent management strategy and the strategy of the organization should have a certain kind of effect. If your talent management strategy is looking one way, and the strategy of the organization or the vision of the organization is looking the other way, then you have divergence effect. And that one does not create the synergy and the harmony that you need to be able to get the talent to work and to be retained. Because when your human capital thinks that whatever investment you are putting in them, whatever you are doing for them has nothing to do with the strategy of the organization, it means that they cannot even, grow the organization and be happy to be part of the success story. And so the best is to have a convergence effect where your talent retention or talent management, strategies actually align with the bigger organizational strategies. So if you do not manage talent well, skill wastage, people who have the skill but you are not using, and that will cost you a lot. It costs you in productivity, it costs you in system, efficiency, and internal service downfall. then your business plans will even be dislocated. And obviously, the whole value chain will be deteriorated. And so we need to use our human capital, diversity and inclusion, and talent management to drive that organizational behavior. How do we do it? Because when you have this coming together in a very convergent, manner, and with all the alignments, then there will be a better understanding. Your people will have a better understanding of the organizational demographics. And so policies to support them as leadership, you know the policies to support them, and they will also know their social part of the contract and what they need to deliver. And so clients' loyalty will be high because your people will have the skill set to deliver to your clients. And succession planning, which has eluded a lot of organizations, will now be a smooth journey where the pipeline will always have people who are ready for critical roles. And the organization will therefore attract the best talent. And obviously your processes will improve, innovation will support whatever you do, and a high-performing culture will be the benefit. So when you have, the benefits of human capital, diversity and inclusion, and talent management, some of the benefits are just better employee brand, because when the employees go out there and they are exhibiting the right brand, then the organization deserves, all the accolades. So you create a competitive advantage. You have, more creative and different ideas that helps you to serve your customers and your clients better. And there are greater opportunities for you to review and refine your processes. So you'd have all the advantages, by driving the focus towards companies' crucial objectives when you align these three areas and you clearly and specifically give responsibilities that will be associated with specific goals for the organizational growth. And that strengthens the sense of ownership, commitment, and accountability of employees. So then there's superior productivity, people are focused, involvement of everyone, there is integration, and the silo working mentality gives way to collaboration. So when leadership values human capital, diversity and inclusion, and team management, you build a stronger employee and employment brand. People now get attracted to you. You improve your talent acquisition fundamentals because now, everything, your compliance and all your incentives. So people even now walk to you, come to you, speak with you because they want to be part of your organization because of the success story and how you value human capital. And then in terms of long term, the focus will therefore then be on workforce planning for the future. Sustainability will then support, the whole organization and it will go into the future. Because when these are aligned with strategy, then employees understand their individual roles, their individual values and capabilities, and they are able to align that to the organizational strategy. Talents, are close to work, and talents are able to make decisions which affect the day-to-day. And the organization obviously identifies these people and are able to give them the right kind of projects to be engaged in, regardless of their age, their gender, their length of service, their race, or whatever. And that is where diversity will really be taking shape. And employees then understand that they need and they are part, indeed, of the organizational strategy overall. And that in itself, HR must ensure that, such positive employee experience across the life cycle is clearly, obvious for everybody to know. But in doing this, you need to have some watch outs, area that you need to actually pay attention to. That when human capital is not sufficiently aligned to business strategy, you are just pouring water on stone. And limited application of diversity, equity, and inclusion. If the organization is just focusing on just a little window when it comes to diversity and just wanting to tick the boxes to say that I have, I have 6 women in my team of 10, etc. That is not what we are looking at. But we are looking at really making it a part and a critical part of your organization and using it to draw and design the organizational behavior that you expect. Because when we don't do that, there will be inconsistency in execution of talent programs. And when there's lack of accountability, you gain little or nothing from your people and from the talent that you bring in. So at the end of it all, we are saying that it's imperative that we move beyond just talking about human capital as the most important asset, but actually make it the real capital. And then diversity, equity, and inclusion should be, at the center of everything we do, so that we can have different perspectives to organizational development and talent management, making sure that when we have our key talent, we keep them, we retain them, and they deliver, to the business. Because that important asset will give us the practical moves that will support us to drive the right organizational behavior. And so when the opportunities have come together and we have prepared the people and we have given them the opportunity to be innovative, to share their different perspectives and opinion, and our talents are well managed, we then have an organization that is very much prepared to be successful. And so on that note, I would want to say thank you for giving me the opportunity to share these few thoughts. I hope I didn't overrun my 40 minutes. I was being mindful of that, but there's still a bit of time to ask questions and contribute. So I'll hand over to the moderator who will, moderate the next 15 or 20 minutes of our session. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Dr. Stella Agyenim-Boateng, for this marathon race. I know it's a marathon race because the time was limited and we are trying to cover a lot of things. Please, we have 5 minutes let me make it 7 minutes to ask questions. So please, if you have any question, kindly raise your hand or leave the question in the chat box and it will be read. Okay, I've seen the hand of Mr. Zachary. So, Madam, please, would you like to take the questions one after the other, or you want to take it in tens of three?
I think yes, in batches of 3 will be helpful, so we don't spend too much time.
Okay. All right. So, Mr. Zachary Abdallah, please.
Okay. Yeah. Thank you so much, Director of Operations, and thank you very much, Doc. A powerful presentation. Please, I want to know. I know that organizations, before they grant study leaves, for their staff to study, they always make sure that they assess the organization needs before granting people to go and do that. But now, the education sector is so liberalized that we have weekends classes, we have modular classes, part-time classes, and all that. So individuals on their own go into enroll onto some of these courses that are not sometimes even related to their careers, which has a possible effect on their career building as well as their productivity to the organization. So I want to know, is it advisable for organization to continue to entertain some of these things, or is not advisable? And what you, the experts, are doing about this? Thank you so much.
Thank you so much, Mr. Zachary. Yes, please. So, Madam, please, we have some questions. Okay, Mr. Rudolph, I know you left the question, but you can speak.
Yeah, thank you very much for a very illuminating and enlightening lecture. I want to find out, Ghanaian institutions, both public and private, are not short of quality human capital. I've been in the medical field myself for so many years, but we are perennially underperforming when it comes to deliverance of our mandates as doctors and nurses. What do you think is responsible for this perennial underperformance in both private and public institutions, even though we have good quality human capital? Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. Madam, please, the third question is in the chat box. Can I pick it up for you to answer?
Yeah, sure. Yeah.
All right. This is coming from Mr. Kofi Gani. He said the speaker has mentioned many times the phrase value the organization's human capital. I would like to find out, what does value human capital look like in practice? So that's the question.
Okay. Value human capital.
Yes, please.
Okay. All right, thank you. So let me very quickly take them because we don't have time. I will not be able to expatiate on a lot of things, but if we did have time. But so yes, so the issue of study leave, etc. And should organizations continue to entertain this? Basically, I think you put it right to say that in times of old, when you could clearly tell which organizations were offering what kind of programs, organizations would therefore sponsor people to to go and study, etc. But because today we have multiplicity of, institutions at whichever level, and like you said, weekends, sandwich, evening, and all that, it becomes very difficult for organizations to put, some kind of structure to say, go to this school or don't do this. However, because the organization is also not a charity, where they also have their own aspirations, it is important that, organizations will direct people as to what they need, what the organization needs, and people can fit their own aspirations within that. However, we can also not put a stop to people having their own personal aspirations. But basically, what I would say is that when, as an individual, as an employee, you have your personal aspiration, remember that it is important for you to align that to the organizational aspiration. If these two align, then there is that convergence that is supporting your development and your talent, management and all that. But when you are so strongly, of the opinion that your personal aspiration, even if it does not align with the organizational aspiration, is how you want to go, then that is where you have to pursue your personal aspiration, but you may not have a fit or a purpose in the organization. And so obviously you may have to step out. But if you are able to do that kind of alignment, knowing the organizational strategy and an aspiration and your own aspiration and bringing that kind of convergence, you are able to then develop your career. So no organization can just ask that, do any kind of program, and then come and we will either sponsor or, you'll find a place. So people have all kinds of degrees, but they feel that their degrees or are not being respected, or they think that they are not being given their due. It is because sometimes, and most of the time, that personal aspiration which drove them to do what they did not match that to the organizational aspirations, and to come and the organization may not necessarily need the skill that you have acquired. The second one is talking about, Ghana is not, or Ghanaian organizations are not short of critical capital or people who are, very good, skilled people, but still performance or productivity is low. And what is, causing that, and how can we address that? I think I said it in passing, and again, as the moderator said, because I didn't have much time, I was kind of running through. But really, when you talk about empowerment, when you talk about engagement, we talk about collaboration. When you talk about giving people the opportunity to grow and to have space enough to deliver what they have, to deliver, to bring their skills to bear. Sometimes organizations clamp down on people who have different ideas. Sometimes, we belittle people who we think, by just looking at them, by just observation, we think that they don't have anything to offer. But we do not take pains to actually know and do a kind of assessment of people to know what skills they have and what skills we can help them develop, even where they have gaps. How do we help them to fix the gaps and create opportunities for them? When we look at, how organizations sometimes just bring people in, they allow them to just flow without actually teasing out the skills that can support the organization. People then become disillusioned. And that is why I talked about work to rule. So such people will just work to rule. They won't do the extra things that will bring more value. They won't do the extra things that will increase productivity. And so in the end, we are very quick to say that, productivity is low or people are not performing without necessarily going into the various, aspects of why these things are happening. But at the same time, they are also, the person or the employees also need to play a role. You do not always wait till somebody, gives you that seat, that space to showcase what you can do. Sometimes you create that space for yourself. And in my book, one of the nuggets that I said, I talked about is that, you are responsible for your own relevance, as it were. What it means is that there are times that the space is not giving you, but create, be innovative, and make sure that, you are bringing your skills to bear. Don't always expect that what is in it for me, because when your skills come out, that is when sometimes others who may not have observed will really know what you are made of, and they start utilizing you. And that value, which leads to the next question, the value that you will bring is therefore very open and very obvious to everyone. And that value of human capital, or we should value human capital, I think I was getting it right. The value of the human capital, if I take it from that point, is that it is the human being, as I said from the beginning, who actually creates the value for the organization. It is not the buildings, it is not just your technology, it's not even your finances. It is the people who bring all the ideas and use these other resources to create and recreate and innovate for the organization to be sustainable and competitive. But when you look at it from the other point of view, where it's, I see it as we should value human capital, then obviously that is like what I said from the beginning. Organizational leaders must understand that there is no capital that they possess in that organization that is more valuable than the human being. And so we need to value what the people bring to the table. We need to appreciate it. We need to put some weight on it and give people their fair due in terms of how we motivate them, in terms of how we empower and engage them, in terms of how we even delegate to them to try their hands at things so that they can bring their new ideas, their value to whatever the organization is doing. So these are, some short responses to the 3 questions that I've already received. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Doc. So we are taking the last batch of questions as we are far behind time. The first question before I call Mr. Appiah-Gye, the person is asking, some organizations spend money to train staff who, after acquiring the skill, move over to other organizations. What can be done about that? That's the first question. Let me pick the next one from Mr. George Appiah-Kubi. He's asking, is it intentional or what? Many CEOs are biased in choosing who they want to be promoted to higher positions if the best is not of their own tribe. Please advise why the CEOs choose people to higher positions if they're not from their tribe. The last question, then I'll call on Mr. Appiah-Gye, is please, how could employers build robust human capital within an organizational environment of scarce financial returns? How can employers build robust human capital within an organizational environment of scarce financial returns? Mr. Appiah-Gye, please
Thank
go
you.
for
Thank
it.
you very much. Doc, yes, that was an excellent presentation. My name is Appiah-Gye.
Okay.
First question, Doc, is in your presentation, you indicated that for us to have very strong organizations, one thing that is very critical is to ensure that we have clearly defined functional responsibilities. May I just find out, how does this sit well with this modern HR practice of team building or teamwork? If we're to insist strictly on functional responsibilities, wouldn't that conflict with the practice where we have to embark on teamwork? Then my second question is, these are very laudable ideas that you have presented. I just want to find out how do we, especially those of us in the public sector, how do we manage these situations in the face of political interference that are very obvious in our public sector organizations? Thank you.
Okay. Right. So let me start with, can organizations spend money to train people and then they leave? Yes, so there are many ways of handling this because policies must be strictly adhered to. If you are investing in someone, what are the structures around that investment? What what are the processes that must be that the person must follow? Sometimes in our haste to want to create a sense of, we are investing in our people, etc., we do not put the right policies in place. And even when the policies are in place, we do not actually ensure that the processes are followed. And so you can only, be able to get your return on your investment when you have those policies. For some organizations, it will be bonding. For some organizations, it will be creating certain, room for you to do some flexible working hours so that they still get the benefit of the investment that they have in you. But when the policies are there, but we do not comply with, or we do not use them, then you will have some of these situations. Of course, there are times that you want to comply with all the policies, but people come back and we do not even give them, they have trained in other areas, they come back and we are not giving them the opportunity, empowering them, or giving them, roles that befit their new skills that they have acquired. If you do that, they become demoralized and they start looking elsewhere. And mind you, because you have trained them and you are not utilizing the skills that they have brought, others will be prepared to pay you the money you have spent and take that knowledge or that talent away. And that is detrimental. And so we need to have the right policies and be able to also give them the opportunities when we have invested in them. And that's the only way we can get the return on our investment. And then intentionally promote, like CEOs intentionally promoting, their kind, their tribesmen or tribeswomen, etc., was the next question. See, that is why I spent a bit of time talking about diversity and inclusion, and the fact that, if leadership creates a certain sense of micro inequities, a certain sense of biases, conscious or unconscious biases in an organization, then that leadership is actually, pushing the organization to the point of failure. Because you see, you may be promoting people who to their level of incompetence. And if you do that, you have only given them titles, but you have not given them any skill that the organization can benefit from. And at the end of it, if we all understand that the reason we are there, the reason you can say you are a CEO, the reason you can say you are an employee, or the reason you can, promote somebody is because of the organization, then why would you take certain steps that will bring the organization down because you have put in place people who do not have the right skills or the right attitude, the right, knowledge in positions that require other skills other than what they have? And so transparent policies, and that is why you need to have people who can understand the essence of the human capital and how it can be used to inure to the benefit of the organization. When leadership understands that, this whole issue, as you said, of intentionally giving people promotion just because they belong to the same church, or they're of the same gender, or that sort of thing, will not be how we run organizations. And the next one was, how can human capital be built, a robust human capital be built when there's scarce financial resource? Of course, there's never a time that any organization, for that matter, I always say, not even in our homes with a few people, there's never a time that you're going to have all the resources that you need to be able to do the things that you need to do. And that is where creativity and innovation comes to play. In as much as financial, funding and all that are very, very important, there are a lot of things that can also be done without financial, resource to grow our human capital. Let me just give you one. For instance, if an organization knows that we need to develop our people, we need to grow these people, we have a few people here that we've identified as our talents, and we need to strengthen them. So, but we don't have the money to take them to the Ivy schools and everything and everywhere. But we can create and institutionalize a structured mentorship system in your organization, or even with other collaborators or other stakeholders, where they will use their experiences and their skills to develop your people for you without necessarily spending, as much money as you will spend if you are to take them out for training, elsewhere. And this becomes on-the-job training. It becomes, learning that creates an opportunity for hands-on and experiential learning, And so there are a lot of ways, innovative ways, that we can still build our human capital, even with the little or the scarce financial resources that we have as an organization. I think the other two from Mr. PJ, you talked about, when we clearly define functional responsibilities, and then we are talking about teamwork. I was trying to get you the slide where I talked about that, and I said that in as much as we need to have our functional roles and responsibilities clearly outlined to avoid ambiguity and to avoid, gray areas. It's important that we have these outlined. However, I also said in that slide that we should not lose sight of fluidity, to create a fluid system where people can collaborate and not work as silos. The fact that I know my functional lines or my functional responsibilities should not stop me from collaborating with others, because remember that my output is somebody's input. Whatever I deliver is what another needs or uses to also work to be able to live. And therefore, there is that fine line and that kind of collaboration and that fluidity that stems from my function into yours and into the other. So we are not, seeking for silo working. We are seeking for collaboration, for cooperation, for teamwork. That still does not create, no man's land as it is. That sometimes, when there are no fine lines, people don't know who is supposed to do this and who is supposed to do that. So you create both, and it is very, very possible to do that. Create the functional, outlines, as well as create the fluidity that flows, or whatever flows from one into the other, so that collaboration is encouraged and not silo working mentality, but without losing sight of something that everybody thinks everybody will do, and therefore nobody does it. And that sometimes becomes a problem when people don't know who it is that is supposed to do, because it is very seamless. You need to have the clear lines as well. I think the last one, again from Mr. PJ, is about building the human capital with political interference and all that. I mean, so when we talk about interference, I think that the first thing everybody will talk about will be political interference. But I can tell you that there are many, many other interferences that, as leaders in organizations you experience. It may not just be from political sources. It may be from traditional, communities. It may be from other opinion leaders. It may be from your church. It may be from your schoolmates. It may be from all kinds of people. And so I just don't want us to skew it to only that kind of interference. It can be from everywhere. But one thing is to make sure that you have principles and values for the organization and for yourself. And you are able to build your negotiation and communication skills so solidly that you are able to explain situations and you are able to use the right policies and processes to drive whatever agenda that you have to drive. I mean, you cannot take away what anybody can call you and tell you. But if you have the right policies and you are able to explain, and like I said, we don't have much time for me to even share some experiences that I personally have, you are able to get to the point where your integrity and what you do is clearly outstanding, because people will then start trusting you for what you stand for. But when you are gullible and you don't know what you stand for, when your values, your own personal values, are not espoused to the point where they can stand the test of time, then all the kinds of influences, will drive you very frustrated. So your personal values are very important. Understanding the space that you are in, having knowledge about what needs to be done in terms of policies and processes, and having the right communication skills and people skills to be able to manage people and manage people's expectations are some of the skills that you need to support you, in dealing with some of these interferences from different angles, at different times. Yeah, so these are the questions that I had in the second round. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Dr. Stella. So that brings us to the end of the questions and the end of the presentation. Before I call on my colleague to give the closing remarks, I want to say thank you, Dr. Stella, for availing yourself, and thank you. Despite your busy schedules, you made time for us. We appreciate you so much for accepting to do this. Mr. Mankra, please, you have the floor for the closing remarks.
Thank you very much, Dr. Stella. Indeed, it looks like the introduction we did, you have done justice to it. We have learned so much. At least the key takeout for me is the KSA: knowledge, skill, and attitude. And it's always been said, attitude is everything. And I believe that if we have the knowledge, the skill, and the attitude, and the employees are engaged, indeed, the workplace will be a better place and outputs will be better. It looks like this calls for a master class. And so we'll think about it, we'll discuss, and then we'll see how we'll do it, so that this knowledge will not go waste, we can make something out of it, and our members and the general public also benefit. Thank you all for taking part this evening. We hope to see you again when we share our next program and you will all be engaged. Thank you so much. Have a good evening.
Thank you also
so much,
for the opportunity.
Thank you,
me.
Dr. Stella Agyenim-Boateng. I'm coming back for you. Thank you very much. We are grateful.
Thank you, my
Thank
president.
You so much.
Thank you, everyone, for joining us. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much, Madam President. Thank you, Doc.
Yeah.
So kindly note that the recording will be sent to your respective emails by close of day Friday. Thank you, and a good night to everybody. Thank you, Doc.
Thank
once
you,
again.
Celestia.
Thank you, Madam
Thank you.
President.
All right. Bye, everyone.
Bye and good night.
Good night.
Bye. I'll see you.